I was told on my first day, never ever go to Sector 7 alone. It took me 19 years to break that rule. I wish I hadn't. My name is David Marsh. I spent 20 years as a backcountry ranger in the Pacific Northwest, patrolling over 300 square miles of wilderness. I've pulled lost hikers out of ravines. I've tracked black bears through snowstorms. I've spent weeks alone in fire towers where the only sound is whined through the pines and the crackle of my radio. In 2 decades, I saw things that would make most people reconsider stepping off pavement. But nothing compares to what I found in Sector 7. And for 19 years, I followed the one rule every ranger in our district knew by heart. You don't go to Sector 7 alone. Ever. Sector 7 isn't its official name. On the maps we use, it's just labeled Zone 7 Restricted Access, but nobody calls it that. To us, it's always been Sector 7. A stretch of old-growth forest in the northeast corner of the park, about 12 miles from the nearest trailhead. No campgrounds, no trails, no permits issued. Just dense timber, steep ravines, and a service road that hasn't been maintained since the 1980s. The restriction isn't about protecting the land. It's not a wildlife preserve or a cultural site. There's no signs explaining why it's off limits. Just a single weathered post at the access road that says, * authorized personnel only, no public entry, **. Most visitors never even know it exists. But for rangers, Sector 7 is the place we don't talk about, at least not in official reports. I heard the stories my first week on the job. An older ranger, guy named Tom Callahan, been with the Park Service for 30 years, pulled me aside after a training session and said, *, you'll hear things out there. You'll see things. Most of it you write up. But if it happens in Sector 7, you keep it to yourself. I laughed it off at first. Thought it was some kind of hazing ritual for the new guy. But over the years, I started noticing a pattern. Radios would crackle with static near the Sector 7 boundary. Rangers on patrol would report hearing voices in the trees, clear as day, calling their names, only to find no one there. Equipment malfunctioned. Compasses spun. Batteries drained in minutes. And then there were the disappearances. Not official ones. Not the kind that made the news or triggered search and rescue operations. These were quieter. A hiker would file a backcountry permit, planning to camp near the edge of Sector 7. They'd be reported overdue. We'd search the area, find their camp. Kaklashanai, gear still there, food untouched. Like they'd stood up, walked into the trees, and simply kept walking. The cases were always closed as presumed lost or voluntary departure. The families were told their loved ones had probably gotten disoriented and wandered off trail. But the rangers, who worked those searches, we knew. Something was wrong in Sector 7. Had been for decades. Late nights at the ranger station, when the tourists were gone and it was just us around the coffee pot, the stories came out. Tom told me about a patrol in the early 90s. He and his partner had been tracking what they thought was a lost child. They'd heard crying echoing through the trees. They followed it for hours, deeper and deeper into Sector 7, until the crying stopped. When they turned around, their boot prints were gone. Every single one. The forest floor looked untouched, like no one had walked through in years. Another ranger, Sarah Chen, swore she saw lights moving through the canopy one night while stationed in a fire tower overlooking the sector. Not flashlights, not headlamps. Glowing orbs drifting between the trees in perfect formation, silent as ghosts. And then there was the standing rule, unwritten but universally understood. If you have to enter Sector 7, you go in pairs. Minimum, and you're out before dark. Asterisk. No exceptions. No one ever explained why. We just knew. So why did I go alone? October 2019. We'd received reports from a forestry crew working the boundary road. They'd found something, a collapsed structure, maybe an old cabin or research station. deep inside Sector 7. The crew refused to investigate further. Said the place felt wrong. Their supervisor called it in to us, asking if we had any records of abandoned buildings in that zone. We didn't. I was the senior ranger on duty that week. My partner had called in sick. Protocol said I should wait, but the forecast showed heavy rain moving in within 48 hours. If there was a structure out there, unstable, collapsing, potentially dangerous to anyone who wandered in, I needed eyes on it before the storms hit and washed away access roads. I told myself it would be quick. In by noon, out by sunset. Just a reconnaissance run. Document the site, mark it on the map, file the report. I told myself it would be fine. I told myself the stories were just stories. I was wrong. I packed my gear that morning with hands that wouldn't stop shaking. 20 years of experience, and I felt like a rookie all over again. Because deep down, beneath all the logic and protocol and professional confidence, I knew the warnings weren't just superstition. And I was about to find out why. The access road into Sector 7 starts innocently enough. Gravel and dirt, overgrown with weeds, but still passable if you don't mind scraping through blackberry brambles. I parked my truck at the gate, the one with the authorized personnel only sign hanging crooked on rusted chains, and shouldered my pack. The air felt heavier there, like stepping into a basement that hadn't been opened in years. I checked my radio. Static. Not unusual this far out, but it crackled louder than normal, almost rhythmic. I switched frequencies. Same thing. I turned the volume down and clipped it back to my belt. Then I stepped past the gate. The temperature dropped, not drastically, maybe 5 degrees, but enough that I noticed. Enough that the hairs on my arms stood up under my sleeves. I told myself it was just the shade. The canopy here was thicker than anywhere else in the park, old-growth Douglas fir and western red cedar towering overhead, their branches intertwined so tightly that even at noon, the light barely reached the forest floor. But it wasn't just the shade, it was the silence. No birds. I stopped after the first 100 yards and stood completely still, listening. In 20 years of backcountry work, I'd never been in a forest this quiet. There's always something. A woodpecker hammering bark, a jay scolding from the branches, the rustle of a squirrel in the duff. Here, nothing. Just the sound of my own breathing, the creak of my pack, the faint hum of blood rushing in my ears. I started walking again, boots crunching on pine needles. Each step sounded too loud, like I was announcing myself to something I couldn't see. The trail, if you could call it that, was barely visible. Decades of neglect had let the forest reclaim it. Roots buckling through the old roadbed, ferns sprouting in tire ruts that hadn't seen a vehicle since before I was born. I kept my eyes on the GPS unit clipped to my chest rig. The coordinates the forestry crew had given me put the structure about 2 miles in, northeast bearing. Straight shot, if the terrain cooperated. It didn't. Half a mile in, the forest started to change. The trees grew denser, trunks pressed closer together, their bark mottled with lichen that looked almost wrong. Pale green and sickly yellow, spreading in patterns that reminded me of veins. The undergrowth thickened into walls of salal and sword fern, forcing me to push through with my arms up, branches scraping against my jacket. And then I started noticing the trees. They were marked, not by humans, not carved initials or trailblazes. These were deep gouges, raked into the bark in sets of 4 or 5 parallel lines. Too high to be from a bear. Too deliberate to be from antler rubs. I stopped at one and ran my hand along the grooves. Fresh. The sap was still tacky, amber beads clinging to the exposed wood. Whatever had done this had been here recently. Very recently. I pulled my hand back and wiped the sap on my pants. My mouth had gone dry. The gouges continued. Tree after tree, always on the side, facing deeper into Sector 7. Like markers. Like something had been leaving a trail. Or a warning. That's when the smell hit me. At first, it was faint, a sourness in the air, like rotting vegetation or a dead animal decomposing somewhere off-trail. I'd smelled it before on patrols, elk carcasses, bear kills, that sort of thing. Unpleasant, but natural. This was different. The deeper I went, the stronger it got. It wasn't just decay, it was acrid, sharp, almost chemical. Like wet dog, mixed with sulfur and something I couldn't place. Something organic but wrong, like meat left out in the sun too long. I pulled my collar up over my nose, but it didn't help. The stench clung to the back of my throat, thick and oily. I checked the GPS. Still a mile and a half to the coordinates. My gut told me to turn back. Every instinct I'd honed over 2 decades was screaming that I shouldn't be here. But I'd come this far. And if there was a hazard, a collapsing structure, a toxic site, something, I needed to document it. I kept walking. I heard it about 20 minutes later. A knock. Wood on wood. Distant, but unmistakable. A single, hollow thunk that echoed through the trees. I froze. The sound had come from my left, maybe 100 yards out. I turned slowly, scanning the forest. Nothing moved, just the wall of trunks and the oppressive green shadows between them. I waited. Silence. Then another knock, this time from my right. My pulse spiked. I pulled the radio from my belt and keyed the mic. Ranger Marsh to base, do you copy? Static. Louder now. Almost aggressive, like something was pushing against the signal. I tried again. Base, this is Marsh. Radio check. Nothing but white noise. I was alone. Another knock. Closer. Directly ahead this time. I started moving faster. The knocking stopped, but something worse replaced it. Footsteps. Heavy. Deliberate. Crunching through the underbrush parallel to my position. I couldn't see what was making them. The forest was too thick, but I could hear them. Each step matched my pace. When I stopped, they stopped. When I moved, they moved. Whatever it was pacing me. I tried to convince myself it was a deer. Maybe an elk, but the rhythm was wrong. Too bipedal, too synchronized. The footsteps shifted. Now they were behind me. I spun around, hand instinctively going to the canister of bear spray clipped to my belt. The trees stared back, silent and still. No movement, no sound. But I felt it. Eyes on me. Watching. Waiting. I turned back toward the coordinates and kept walking. Faster now, my breath coming in short bursts. The GPS said I was close. Another quarter mile. The footsteps returned, this time on both sides. 2 of them. The forest opened suddenly, violently, like the trees had been shoved aside. I stumbled into a clearing, maybe 30 feet across, ringed by towering firs that leaned inward like they were trying to close the gap. The ground was bare. No grass, no undergrowth, just dark soil and scattered stones. And in the center of the clearing, half buried in moss and shadow, was the structure. It wasn't a cabin. It wasn't a research station. It was something else entirely. My legs locked up. Every fiber of my body screamed at me to turn around, to run, to get the hell out of Sector 7 and never come back. But I couldn't move. Because I'd seen the scratches on the trees. I'd heard the knocking, the footsteps. And now I understood. They hadn't been following me. They'd been hurting me, leading me here, to this place. I stood at the edge of that clearing for what felt like hours, but was probably only seconds. My heart hammered against my ribs. The smell was overwhelming now, so thick I could taste it. Behind me, the forest had gone completely silent again. No knocking, no footsteps, no wind. Just waiting. I forced my legs to move. 1 step, then another. Toward the structure. Toward whatever Sector 7 had been hiding all these years. The structure was old, fixed-old in a way that didn't match any records I'd ever seen. Concrete walls, crumbling and stained with decades of rain and rot. No windows. A single entrance, a steel door hanging crooked on broken hinges, half open like a mouth frozen mid-scream. The forestry crew had called it a collapsed structure. They'd been wrong. This wasn't collapsed, this was intentional. Someone had built this place out here. Miles from any road, any trail, any logical reason. And then they'd left it to rot. Or so I thought. I pulled my flashlight and approached the entrance. The beam cut through the darkness inside, illuminating concrete floors slick with moisture, walls streaked with black mold. The smell rolled out in waves. That same acrid stench, but stronger now, almost alive. I keyed my radio one more time. Pure static. Then I stepped inside. The interior was a single room, maybe 20 feet by 20 feet. Empty, except for... I stopped. The walls. Every inch of them was covered in scratches. Deep, frantic gouges carved into the concrete, layered over each other like desperate handwriting. Not random. Not vandalism. Words. I moved closer, playing the flashlight beam across the surface. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold it steady. It watches. Don't sleep. They take you when you close your eyes. No way out. It knows your name. The words repeated, over and over, spiraling across the walls in a manic scrawl. Some scratched with fingernails. Others looked like they'd been carved with rocks, with metal, with anything sharp enough to leave a mark. And beneath the words, tallies. Hundreds of them. Thousands. Little clusters of 4 vertical lines with a diagonal slash, counting something. Days, maybe, or deaths. That's when I saw the corner, the back left corner of the room, where the shadows were thickest. There was a shape there. Dark. Huddled. My throat closed. I swept the flashlight toward it, and for one horrible second I thought it was a person. Someone crouched down, back to me, unmoving. Then the beam steadied. Not a person. A pile of belongings. Backpacks, sleeping bags, clothing. All of it rotting, mildewed, falling apart. But recognizable. Camping gear. I stumbled forward, legs numb, and crouched next to the pile. My hand hovered over a faded blue backpack, its straps chewed through by time and moisture. I pulled it toward me. The zipper was rusted shut, but I forced it open. Inside, a wallet. Weathered, leather cracked and warped. I flipped it open. A driver's license stared back at me. Washington State. A woman's face, smiling in the photo. Blonde hair. Early 30s. Issued, 1987. My stomach dropped. I dug deeper into the pile. Another pack. Another wallet. Another license. Oregon, 1993. California, 2001. British Columbia, 2008. I stopped counting after 12. My hands were shaking too hard to keep searching. These weren't just abandoned items. These were trophies. Evidence. A collection spanning decades. People had been here. People had died here. And someone, or something, had brought their belongings to this place. Left them in the corner like offerings. That's when I heard it. A breath. Not mine. Close. Too close. I spun around, flashlight slashing through the dark. The room was empty. The doorway was still open, pale daylight filtering through. But I wasn't alone. I could feel it. The same presence I'd felt on the trail. The same weight pressing against my chest, suffocating and cold. The scratches on the walls suddenly made terrible sense. This place wasn't abandoned. It was a trap. The knocking. The footsteps. The way the forest had herded me here. It had all been deliberate. Something had been guiding me, pushing me deeper, leading me to this room filled with the remnants of people who'd made the same mistake I had. And now it was here. Inside. With me. My radio crackled to life. Not static this time. A voice. My voice. Ranger Marsh to base, do you copy? I hadn't said those words. Not just now. But I had said them 20 minutes ago, out on the trail. The radio crackled again. My voice panicked, distorted. Base, this is Marsh. Radio check. Then another voice, older, unfamiliar, broken by static. Don't go in there. Marsh, turn back. I didn't wait to hear more. I ran. Flashlight forgotten, pack bouncing against my back. I ran for that door like my life depended on it. Because it did. Behind me, I heard the sound of movement. Heavy, scraping, something massive shifting in the corner where the pile of belongings had been. I hit the doorway at full speed and burst into the clearing. The footsteps erupted around me. Not two anymore. More. Crashing through the underbrush on all sides, closing in fast. I didn't look back. Didn't stop. I ran harder than I've ever run in my life, tearing through the forest. Branches whipping my face, roots trying to trip me. The GPS was useless. I didn't care. I just needed out. The knocking started again. Louder, closer, a cacophony of wood, slamming against wood, echoing through the trees like war drums. And then, just as suddenly as it started, silence. I stumbled into the open air of the access road, gasping, chest heaving. My truck sat exactly where I'd left it, untouched. I climbed inside, locked the doors, and sat there shaking for 10 minutes before I could even start the engine. I drove straight to the ranger station. Sat in the parking lot for an hour trying to figure out what to say. Tom Callahan found me there, took one look at my face and nodded, slow and knowing. You went to Sector 7, he said. Not a question. I didn't answer. What did you find? I opened my mouth, closed it. The words wouldn't come. How do you explain what I'd seen? The scratches, the belongings, the voices, the thing that had been waiting in that room. How do you file a report that says, something in Sector 7 is collecting people, and it's still out there? Tom put a hand on my shoulder. You write it up as a structural hazard. Unsafe building. Recommend demolition. That's it. Nothing else. But the people are gone, he said quietly. Have been for years. And if you start talking about what's really out there, you'll spend the rest of your career trying to convince people you're not crazy. Or worse. Worse? He looked toward the tree line, toward the direction of Sector 7, miles away but still too close. You'll give it attention? And trust me, you don't want that thing's attention. So I stayed silent. I filed my report. Structural hazard. Recommend restricted access remain in place. The building was never demolished. Sector 7 stayed closed. And for 20 years I told myself I'd done the right thing. That some secrets are better left buried. That warning people would only put more lives at risk. But I lied to myself. The truth is, I stayed silent because I was terrified. Terrified that if I spoke up it would come back for me. That I'd hear that knocking again, outside my window at night. That I'd find my own belongings in a pile somewhere, added to the collection. I've been retired for 3 years now, moved 2 states away. But I still check my locks twice before bed. Still freeze when I hear wood knocking in the distance. Because I know what's in Sector 7. And I know it's still waiting. If you're ever hiking in the Pacific Northwest and you see a weathered sign that says authorized personnel only, don't ignore it. Don't convince yourself it's just bureaucracy or outdated regulations. Some places are restricted for a reason. And Sector 7? Sector 7 isn't a place you visit and leave unchanged. It's a place that decides whether you leave at all. I got lucky. The 12 driver's licenses I found in that room, they didn't. The structure is still there. The pile of belongings is still there. And whatever guards that place is still there too, waiting for the next person, foolish enough to break the rule. Don't let it be you. That was October 2019. 6 years ago now. I finished out my career, trained new rangers, logged thousands more miles on patrol, but I never went back to Sector 7. and I made damn sure no one else did either. Every rookie who came through, I'd pull them aside, same way Tom Callahan did with me, and I'd tell them, stay out of Sector 7. I don't care what you hear. I don't care what gets reported. You call it in, and you wait for backup. You don't go alone. Most of them listened. Some didn't. The ones who didn't, they came back different, quiet, jumpy. They'd file their reports as uneventful, but I'd see it in their eyes. That haunted look. The same one I saw in the mirror every morning. They'd seen it too. And like me, they stayed silent. So why am I telling you this now? Why break 20 years of silence? Because last month, I got a call from the current district supervisor. They're talking about reopening Sector 7. Budget cuts mean they need to consolidate patrol zones. And someone in administration thinks that old restricted area is, quote, wasted space. They want to survey it, maybe open it up for backcountry permits. I told them what I could without sounding insane. Bad terrain, structural hazards, history of incidents. He thanked me for my input and said they'd take it under consideration. That means they're going to do it anyway. So this is my warning, not to the Park Service. They stopped listening to rangers like me a long time ago. This is a warning to you, to anyone who hikes. Anyone who thinks they can handle the wilderness because they've got a GPS and a satellite phone. Sector 7 doesn't care about your equipment. It doesn't care about your experience. It just waits. I've spent 6 years trying to make sense of what I saw in that room. The scratches on the walls, the belongings in the corner, the voices on the radio. Was it one thing? Multiple things? Something that's been there since before the park was even established? I don't know. What I do know is this. Those 12 drivers, licenses I found weren't random. I looked them up after I got home. Every single one of them had been reported missing. Every single one had last been seen near the park, and every single case went cold. No evidence, no leads, just disappeared. The families never got answers, never got closure, because people like me stayed silent. And that's the weight I've carried for 20 years. The weight of knowing what happened to those people, knowing where they ended up, and doing nothing about it. I told myself I was protecting others, that speaking up would only draw more attention to Sector 7, put more lives at risk. But maybe I was just protecting myself. There's one more thing I haven't told anyone. Not Tom, not my wife, not the investigators who closed those missing persons cases. When I ran from that structure, when I was tearing through the forest, branches whipping my face, lungs burning, I heard something behind me, not footsteps, not knocking, a voice, my voice, calling my name. David, David, wait. It sounded exactly like me, every inflection, every tone, like I was calling out to myself. I didn't stop, didn't look back, but for just a second. One horrible, frozen second. I wondered, what if it wasn't chasing me? What if it was already ahead of me? What if the thing that ran out of Sector 7 that day wasn't me at all? I still don't know the answer to that question, and I'm not sure I want to. What I do know, what I'm certain of, is this. Sector 7 is still there. The warnings are still there. And whatever I found in that concrete room, surrounded by the belongings of people who never made it home, it's still there too, waiting, watching, collecting. If they open that area to the public, people are going to go in. They're going to ignore the warnings. They're going to tell themselves it's just a restricted zone, just red tape, just paranoid rangers being overly cautious, and some of them won't come back. Their families will file reports. Search teams will be dispatched. They'll comb the area, calling names into the trees, getting nothing but silence in return. And eventually, the case will go cold, just like the others. So if you're ever hiking in the Pacific Northwest, and you see a weathered sign that says Authorized Personnel Only, with a faded Zone 7 inches marker beneath it, turn around. Don't test it. Don't film it for social media. Don't convince yourself you'll be the exception, because you won't be. And 20 years from now, some other ranger will find your belongings in that pile. Your wallet, your backpack, your license. and they'll add your name to the list of people who didn't listen. I'm retired now, living 2 states away. But some nights, when the wind picks up and the trees creak outside my window, I hear it, that knocking. Thunk, 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 wood on wood. And I know, it hasn't forgotten me. It's just waiting for me to come back.